Welcome back, nobodies, to the second part of the life of Dr. Nobody with your host, Dr. Nobody. We left off previously with the moment that I had gotten my letter from Rutgers and accepted into their PhD program and how happy I was. All the adversity I had faced, it was beyond me. It was fine. Passed. So when I joined Rutgers, I joined them a couple months early, so I just started a little bit sooner, and I definitely will go over this in a little more details. But when you're in a PhD program, you have to rotate into three labs first. So you got to test out the waters for each lab to see if there was a fit, if the lab's a fit, and that's where you want to work for 4, 5, 6 years, whatever, how long it is. The first lab I joined was freaking awesome. The second lab, it was just too intense for me. They were just way too serious. The woman that trained me was really rough. She did not care much about me. She just really wanted to get out of there. She was getting ready to graduate. So she was going to leave in a month or two. So I would have no training opportunity with her. I'd have to do it all on my own. Didn't want that. But the third lab that I rotated was really different. There had never been a PhD student in that lab. It was extremely cool research. And I will go over that research and in an episode just for fun, go over what I did during my PhD. I promise it's really awesome. I love talking about my research. So the PI or the primary investigator, that's what we call the basically your advisors during your PhDs. At first glance, he was stern, but he was good. He was willing to help, so I joined. There was a lot of meetings that we had, and I he did test me out, whatever. But he liked me, and I liked him, and I joined. So for the next 4.5 years after I joined, I would be tested immensely. My faith, my beliefs, uh, my me being a minority, my intellect. He challenged me so much, and not in a good way, like, oh, my boss challenged me. No, no, no. In this really disrespectful way. Looking back, yeah, he really prepared me for life, like at the cost of my mental health. Really. Every day I fought internally with myself that was I doing the right thing? Is this how I am? Am I really this bad or whatever? I loved my job though. I loved what I was doing. I love science, but I hated him and I hated the lab. Well, I didn't hate the lab like in terms of like it as a physical entity. I just hated the fact that he ran that lab, and because there were people there that I loved. I loved the people, my coworkers. They made it what it was. I had a great experience with them. Yeah, definitely had a lot of drama. There was so much drama. But I loved them. I loved the people around my advisor. So not him, but everyone else in the department. I loved my mentors and the other graduate students and the friends I made outside the lab. I joined a volleyball group that was for PhDs, dentist students, and medical students. That was so awesome. It really helped my mental health. I looked forward to every Friday or Monday or whatever days we did to play, just to look forward to something. It was really a place for me to be, to really commiserate with other students that had issues, other PhDs or whatever. And everybody goes through a rough patch, and a lot of PhDs will tell you that a lot of their advisors are not great, and it is what it is. And it's not really maybe entirely on the advisor's fault. It's just no one really trains you to be an advisor or mentor to someone. It's just something that naturally comes. But my advisor sucked. He was just a terrible human being. You're probably wondering what he did, and I kind of mentioned a little bit. This episode is I'm going to talk about it, but it's the other episodes that I will go over in a little more depth. But every day or so, he would just make me feel dumb in front of others, like other employees there, other coworkers. He called me out on things that probably could have been done in private. Talked behind my back, made fun of me in front of people, challenged my faith, my views of the world, just things that are so inappropriate. Every decision I wanted to do. So in a PhD program, you need to be independent. You have your advisors, but they kind of just nudge you the right way. They don't really do things for you. They're not like a teacher or anything, But he never let me do that. He never, I mean, he did eventually, but I never got that independence all the time. So he challenged me all the time. Every decision I made was I had to, he was just a micromanager. That's it. I'm just going to skip all this. He was just biggest micromanager I've ever dealt with. There are other things that he had done, but we'll talk about it in the other episode. I was just mentally abused for 4 plus years. I did speak to others. I let them know there are other people that saw what he did and did nothing. Other professors, administrators. He was just a big shot at the school. He had the most money in the school. He got big money from DARPA, so he was basically protected. I even tried to report him a couple times, but no avail. Nothing. Just and let me tell you this one experience. So it had gotten worse, and it was also because I was getting closer to graduation, my timeline for graduation that I thought was right. And other professors had told me, and my other advisors, like, yeah, I think it's time. So I let that guide me. Um, I went to the dean of the school and I talked to him about with another PhD student because we had been talking for a while and realized that our PIs were not good. And we told him what we're going through, and we wanted to kind of have a nice session with other PhD students or whatever students that might be going through a rough patch and talk about it and help us with our mental health. Like I hate using the word, but a safe zone. You know what he told us? Just didn't even care what he said. Like, I was just like, what? He told us no because it was a glorified bitch session. Excuse me? How extremely offensive was that? I was blown away by that comment. And you know what? He didn't care because he was getting ready to leave. So even if we tried to say something to, I don't know, the person who runs the university, nothing's going to happen. And no one cares. So it was just terrible. It's just things that I had to deal with. While all this is happening, all the stuff that's going through with my professor, I had gotten a call from my mother to come over. And when I came over, she sat me down and we spoke. And this was normal. We come over and just talk. She had told me she had breast cancer and needed to get surgery. And I thought to myself, not again, cancer. Now my mom, she was young. She was in her, I want to say, yeah, mid 40s. It was hard to deal with this again. Just all the caring that you have to do, and just I had to focus, but I had to do what I had to do for her. And you know what sucks? They botched her surgery. They were supposed to remove both breasts, but they failed to do that. They only removed one, and the other one did have signs of cancer, and they're like, it's benign, don't worry about it, we'll whatever. Oh, that doctor sucked. We couldn't afford a lawyer, so to sue the hospital just cost a lot of money. And at the end of the day, after my mom's surgery, she just grabbed my hand and just said, don't worry about it. Just I'm just happy it's all over and I can heal. That was the thing about my mom. She just didn't care about things. She was just so carefree after losing my dad. She was just happy. She was just a happy woman. And that was despite everything that's happened to her too. Living with my siblings. At one point I did move out. I did get married, so I lived with my wife. So despite that, and my father passing, and she didn't have, besides my dad's side of the family, she had no family of her own. They were all in Puerto Rico. But she lived her life. She was a funny woman. She was great, beautiful. She was definitely the gossip lady of the town or towns because I mean, there was people she knew. I'm like, wow, and she knows all these people. Just people loved her. She was really popular and special. She was also supportive and a very good friend to people. So when she hadn't gotten sick, she did get a lot of support from people. So, um, and that was great. But like I said, in my other episode, I wasn't always close to my mom as I was to my father, but we still bonded. So I took care of her in every way, and despite our many arguments, it worked out, including her medical care. And she was cancer free, so I wanted her to enjoy her life, and she was very happy. But during my PhD, a little couple years later, I lost both my dad's side of my grandparents. They were the entire bedrock of our family. My family. So growing up, I didn't have many friends because obviously getting bullied, but I did have all my cousins. Just all of them were gamers and nerds like me. We're very close to my family. I mean, we would go over my grandma's house every week and would just chill, eat, party, whatever. All these parties all years out. So it was just a great working relationship with my family. And that's why I don't have many friends. It's just my cousins. So when my grandparents passed away, it was devastating, man. It broke my family apart. I gotta say, cancer is an SOB. They both died of different cancers. Luckily, they died closely, a couple months apart. Because I really didn't think. So my grandfather passed away first, and my grandmother. Um, and you know, the one of many fond memories that I have of my grandmother is that she always told people I was a doctor, to other doctors too. And the thing is, I wasn't even a doctor yet. I was just doing my PhD. And even when I was in high school or college, like she just told people I was a doctor because I was studying medicine for a long time. I knew things, but I wasn't a doctor. But she just loved telling people that I have a doctor in the family, doctor that. So when their passing happened, oh man, it broke me too. I just couldn't believe that it happened. But we made it through and we got better. So back to the PhD story, and um, there was a day that I realized that I had to get out of this lab. I had to force myself to graduate sooner by working insanely hard. I worked long weekends, long night. I would work not like a 9 to 5 ish. PhDs don't really have a like an hourly rate, whatever. But I would come back at night to do another experiment. I would go home, eat dinner, see my wife, and then come back and do more work. That's a typical thing for PhDs, but I just did crazy amount of work. Um, and one day I had a conversation with my PI and I told him like, look, I've been working hard. I'm doing what you want me to do. And I think it's time for me to finish up. And we had a 3 hour fighting match just in the hallway in front of people. He didn't want to do it privately. He just wanted everyone to hear. And that was it. I was like, man, this is the worst. So I got my committee together. So, one advice I had gotten from people was it, a committee basically approves your PhD. So you present to them, they look at your PhD and how it is, blah blah. They read your paper, and then they go, yeah, yes or no. So I got my committee together and I used it against him. I had people that supported me on that committee, minus one person that was just kind of not in the know. But it was fine because he why we kept him not in the loop was so that he was the ultimate decision maker. He was the biggest person in the university. He was a big name in the field and in the world, and he really appreciated hard work. So if he said yes, everyone else would say yes. So the day I was at my defense, I presented my work, and of 4 years, I finally did get him to set down on a date, and we made it during, I think it was July. He wanted something in January, and I said no. We met halfway. So all my family was there. They came from Florida, Pennsylvania, California. All my friends, all like a couple of them, my mom, my siblings, everyone. It was just great, and of course my wife. Yeah. um, I'm not gonna toot my horn, but that was like the best presentation I had ever had. I practiced with my friends from my first lab, which I still have a working relationship with them. Um, but God has blessed me with such a way to talk science to people that don't really understand it. So I really used it, but also obviously I have to talk high level science because I have a committee there. So I did that, and after my presentation, you have to go in a room and we talk. And only 40 minutes it took to decide that I was a good to go. I passed my tests. It was, oh man, I didn't want to cry in front of them, so I held it in. So we were in one private room, and we went downstairs, and my wife and my aunts had set up a party to celebrate. So yeah, you're kind of assuming you pass. So you set up all this stuff, and everybody just assumes you pass, which not every time people pass, but I had a pretty high chance. And I just grabbed my wife, and we just started crying because we both knew it was finally over. All this suffering that I had to deal with him and all the other years of other things I had to deal with was done, and I was done with this horrible man, and I could move on. Our life was going to start fresh. What I failed to mention was that on the side during my final parts of my PhD, so a couple months, I had been applying for places to start, my career, and just to give me hope. And I did get a couple job interviews. And I secured a job, which was amazing. It was a great job. I was really excited. I defended, I want to say like on a Thursday or something, and then I was going to start my new job on a Monday. Another thing I failed to mention was my wife was pregnant, and with we didn't know at the time because we were trying to do the not to know, which was my future son. So my mother always wanted a grandchild. I mean, for years, for the 5 years my wife and I were together at that time, she just always like, when's the grandkid? When's the grandkid? She's just excited. Unfortunately, we never told her the gender, so it made it worse. So she was always like up in the air. Oh, I bet's a girl. I bet's a boy. So whatever. My mother was way more excited about this baby than us. I gotta tell you. And she would call my wife or I and just ask how the baby's doing, how she's doing, how I'm doing, whatever, and asking, giving advice and whatever. So fine. So those are little sidebars. That day of my defense, we celebrated, my family and I. It was great. It was good to see family I hadn't seen in a long time. And then I got to walk my mother around the labs. Like she never been there before. It was state of the art. And I just caught her just crying. And I was like, what's wrong? And she was like, I'm just so proud of you. And I get to say, um, I have a doctor's son. And my son's a doctor. And it filled me up. Like, I really didn't realize I was a doctor at that point. Like no one really calls me doctor at all, to be honest. It doesn't really matter. It's just a degree, but it was something I achieved, something that my dad wanted for me and my family and the I was also the very first to achieve a terminal degree in my family. It was just a wonderful feeling, accomplishment of everything I've been through. So, it's fine. Talked to my mother. I brought her home, and the next day I spoke to my mom to come. She called me to say congratulations again, and she asked me to come over to kind of set up a little party, celebrate, and to see my wife, of course, and the unborn child, her unborn grandchild. So, and I gotta tell you again, my mother loved that kid more than my wife and I combined. It was just ridiculous. I gotta tell you. Everyone knew this too. Everyone in my family. What I didn't know was that phone call will be the very last time I would speak to her. A couple hours later, my wife had gone to go to her parents' house to visit up north, which was about an hour drive. So I was preparing my thesis paper. I sat down on my computer. I started at making my edits, and I got a call. And it's not just a normal call. It was a haunting call, one that would forever give you eternal PTSD. When I get calls out of the blue from people or just I don't know, just from weird times of the day, it just my heart starts beating fast. I start shaking. My brother, the younger of the brothers, is just crying and screaming on the phone. I'm like, what's wrong? He says, Mom is not breathing. She's laying down in the bathtub. She's not waking up. And I'm like, what? I just spoke to her. I just saw her yesterday. I was like, what's going on? I just could not believe it. And I was like, have you tried to, get her up? Or he goes, I tried everything. But one thing is that my mom loved to clean. So she had passed out while she was cleaning in the bathtub. So I told him to call 911. And I rushed over. I lived about 10 minutes away. I made it in three. So, total sidebar, when I see people speeding for no reason across red lights or stop signs or whatever, I just assume that something serious is going on because that day, that was me. I walked into my mom's apartment with just complete pandemonium. The EMTs were all over the place. She was on the floor, flayed out. They were giving her CPR, trying to give her to breathe. I grabbed my siblings and I put them in the other room so they wouldn't see this. And it's just I never forget the image of my father the last time I saw him alive, and unfortunately, the image of my mother on the bathroom on the kitchen floor, laid out, never leaves me. I just two traumatic deaths of parents just haunts you forever. It's just some days it just clicks in my head. It just keeps me up all night. Can't be functional. Can't do things. It just totally devastates me. Slowly, my family started becoming aware of the situation. My extended family, and I called my wife to come back. So we rushed her to the hospital, and they worked on her. At that point, it had been about 45 minutes, and I was in a room, I had my head down, and I was just thinking, I was just praying. I knew it was done. I knew she was dead. There was no way she was going to come back after 45 minutes, and if she did, she was going to have severe brain damage or something was going to be wrong. And I was just more preparing for the news. And the doctor finally did come in another 15 minutes after and told us that she passed away. I immediately grabbed him and I walked him outside and I just asked him like, "What happened? What's going on?" He told me it was a pulmonary embolism. It was just random, and it was because her old cancer and her new cancer. That's right. Her cancer had returned. Remember when I told you that freaking doctor botched that surgery? It came back to affect her years later and eventually kill her. I was more pissed than sad. Can you believe that? Your mother just passed away and you're angrier about all these events that happened that led to this than actual her passing. That's how I felt. I was angry. I didn't know that her cancer was back. Actually, she had a doctor's appointment the next day to talk to her doctor about it. Um, and my mother's death ripped open old wounds, but I was older and wiser, so it was a little bit different. And I thought, well, she suffered a lot during her first course, and I know that she would want to not deal with that again. So God took her to protect her, and it was something I accepted. And deep down, I knew she accepted it too. I know she wanted to see her grandchild so badly, and she never will get to meet him physically. But I know that she's with my sister, my father, my grandparents, um, and watching over us. So that's how I live life. And you're probably thinking, "Wow, that's a lot to take in." That I wouldn't have made a podcast if it was just that. There's more. As you can figure, my brother and my sister are now orphans. Yes, there's the other brother, but he was older. He's in his 20s. But my siblings were 13 and 17. Instead of mourning my mother, I spent with my brother weeks securing custody and guardianship for my siblings, securing extra funds, securing still trying to bury my mother, securing paperwork, looking through all the paperwork, getting kicked out of the apartment fast, my mother's apartment, moving my siblings into my one bedroom, one bath apartment with my wife. Tiny, tiny, tiny house. So we took them in. We prayed on it. We thought about it for a long time. We actually sent my siblings with my aunts for vacation after a couple weeks after my mom passed to give my wife and I time to think about what we needed to do. She was pregnant, and we were about to just go from 0 kids to 3 kids in less than a couple weeks. So uh, we took them in, we crammed them all, and I eventually started my first job, which was amazing. And I'm so happy I ended up taking that job because it really set me up career wise and financially. Eventually, my son was born the same day. My good friend, it will be on this podcast, threw me a man shower. She brought in my 8.5 week pregnant wife to New York City through mass transit and through rough areas. And we made it home, and we were watching I don't know, I think Downton Abbey or something, and it just started happening. So my son was born the next day. It was the happiest moment of my life. I could spend another hour just talking about how happy I was with my son and just seeing him born and just everything with my mom too. Just so happy. Uh, but eventually, COVID hit the next month, and I started working from home early on. I'm an infectious disease expert. I saw it coming, so I did ask to start a little bit early, and my boss did give me the ability to stay home earlier than other people. Um, and we'll talk about it later, but I eventually got on a business for one of the vaccines for COVID, and it really benefited me because I was an infectious disease expert. But as being an infectious disease expert and on a COVID-19 vaccine, you would think that my extended family would seek help from me and just, listen to my words and trust me about stuff. And um, during the pandemic, it affected everyone. Everybody took it hard. And what eventually happened a year after the pandemic happened, my aunt passed away. My aunt, this particular aunt, was the final rock of our family. I mean, she kept it all together for all of us. She was a sage of a woman. She had intense faith. She was the best darn cook you would ever experience. She gave her all to everyone. She loved everyone, no matter how badly you treated her. She didn't have a bad bone in her body. She gave people food for free, even though it cost her. And what later we would find out is that she was in an immense debt. It was hard. It was hard on my uncle. It was hard on my family. It just broke everything on the family. So it affected us. It affected me. It affected my family too. My personal family. It just has never been the same since. And to be fair, it never will be. My suffering, my losses, my adversity, my challenges, my problems, I could have let them own me. I could have let them mold me into something totally different and put me on a different path, possibly a path of destruction. I was almost there. I was almost there. But I didn't, and I couldn't, and I wouldn't allow it. I was focused. I had a reason to live. Yeah, I admittedly considered killing myself many times. It was really it was really hard. It was really, really hard. My parents, my siblings, my wife, my eventually my son, my extended family, friends, just people. I lived for them. I had a reason to live. They gave me purpose. Yes, totally had setbacks and things I regret, but you can't blame me. It's hard to be an orphan and raise your own siblings plus your own kid. I never let the above that I mentioned define me. I knew what I had to do, and that all was directly instilled from my father. He created me. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be the man as I am today. When I lost him, I lived for my siblings and my mom, and I knew what needed to be done for my and their survival. When I lost my mother, it was the same thing. I lived for them. I could give them a future that no one in my family or even my own parents could give them. I God intervened in my life way, way earlier than anything I could have possibly thought of unless I experienced all this. He set me up for an extremely successful career, and it really blessed me, afforded me the ability to take care of everyone. And after a lot of discussion, my wife ended up staying home. She wanted the choice, and we had always set up that way. She wanted to stay home and raise our son and any future kids we would have. So we wanted to focus. She wanted to focus on raising him, and and she took the role of mother to my siblings as well. And when you look back into my story, and all this has just been finely choreographed. All these things kept happening, and I capitalized or took advantage of opportunities for myself to set myself up for success. And I didn't know. I how would I have known? How would anyone have known? My PhD and my job after, if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't have had the money to support my wife, my child, and my siblings. I would have lost them all. I wouldn't have been able to do it. If I let the devastation of my father take hold of me, I would have fallen away from my life and God and maybe ended it all. I wouldn't even have met my wife, the woman who saved me from so much hate and despair and destruction. The suffering I experience and will continue to experience is what makes me stronger. I let it give me the ammo to push forward and work even harder. What I want to make sure you all understand is that your hardships can shape you. Let it, but don't let it control you. You control it. Make the most out of it. Take the time you need to mourn or whatever process you need to do for whatever event it is, and then capitalize on it. Let it make you stronger. Go for gold because you never know. Look at my life. I never knew. I hope you gained insights and are excited to find your own passions. This is the beginning of becoming a someone, but specifically the someone you always wanted to be. In the next episode, we're going to interview one of my friends, and we're going to talk about the adversity he's experienced. And then after, we're going to go back into my episodes and talk about my career. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please do give me a like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also visit the drnobodypodcast.com to learn more about my episode, my guests, and maybe even share this episode and much, much more. Thanks again for listening to the Dr. Nobody podcast, where we turn nobodies to somebodies. Talk to you all very soon.